talking about how important it is that we picture one thing, but that other folks may picture something completely different. And you know it because you've seen the language around affordable housing corrupted over and over again. You've seen people say, we mean affordable housing, but build something that doesn't reach the people who folks in this room seek to serve. So, I think that this concept is really incredibly embodied in this quote. Yesterday unconsciously holds tomorrow hostage. There's this way in which, as we think about things and we think that we are moving forward, sometimes we are caught in the past way of doing things. And we can't see our way forward to the new opportunities that are ahead of us. So, clearly, when two people think that they're working towards the same goal, and they're talking the same language, but they have different images, it can be very difficult. And particularly in the wake of a disaster like Katrina or Sandy, it can fundamentally change everything. It definitely changed everything for our communities. Katrina was an incredibly terrible disaster, and I know you guys have been through a similar disaster, but I'll just remind you of how bad it was. You saw people stranded on their rooftops. You saw people with no place to go. You saw at some points, as far as the eye could see, that everything was demolished and destroyed. You saw houses that were completely picked up and moved from their original location. You saw sometimes houses that landed on top of cars and boats, and then of course the cleanup process was incredibly terrible. I, after Hurricane Katrina, ended up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is about an hour outside of New Orleans. And at that point, I didn't even know if we would continue to have this New Orleans Fair Housing Action Center that I run. Because I didn't know if, frankly, there was going to be a New Orleans anymore. We were still asking those kinds of questions. And it became clear, though, that we were going to have a lot of hard work to do. Now, so I think the second lesson that I have for all of you advocates is be careful about who you give your cell phone number out to. Because I got an immense number of calls after Hurricane Katrina, more than I could ever handle. I got a call from one guy who said, look, I applied to FEMA for housing, and then they sent me to this website to look for some housing, and I was blown away by what I saw, and you need to go to the website right now. I said, sir, I will make the opportunity to get to the website as quickly as I can, but right now, I don't know where my office is going to be. I don't have a place to sleep tonight. I'm still trying to work these issues out. He said, no, you got to go to the website. So he was so insistent that I eventually went to the website. And I went to a website called katrinahousing.org, and I found a few interesting things. The first thing that I found was an advertisement for an apartment that was available in Alabama. And the owner wanted to help people who were affected by Hurricane Katrina. The owner wanted to make sure that some people had a place to live. Just wanted to help. And so I read the ad, and I get to the very end of the ad, and I was shocked because it said, I would love to house a single mom with one child, not racist, but white only. Now, I'm not sure about how you guys think this racism thing works. I was a little confused, certainly. I said, well, I don't think that this guy gets it, right? So, but hey, this was one advertisement, and of course we know that there are issues around racial discrimination, around sex discrimination, around sexual, and just we can go down the list of all the kind of discrimination that we know happens in our community. And you know, at this moment, no one had housing. The disaster was terrible. So I said, all right, we'll get to this when we have time, but we'll keep things moving. But so I did continue looking at the website, and I went to the next advertisement, and it said, not to sound racist, but because we want to make things more understandable for our younger child, we would like to house white children. I said, oh, wow, this is a disturbing trend. Then I went to the next advertisement. Provider will provide room and board for $400, prefers 2 white females. I think that there's a race issue, but something else was going on here. And so I said, wow, these ads continue. I was certainly naive. I thought that in the wake of disaster, all the stories that I had seen and heard and all my experiences had been that people united, that people look past all the lines that usually divide us. They cross those lines in order to unify and to make sure that we all had an incredible, resilient return in the city of New Orleans. But I realized that that wasn't the case and that we had a lot of work to do. And I want to be clear that the most shocking advertisements are around race, but we found ads that discriminated against black people, against white people, against people who were gay and lesbian. We found ads that discriminated against people who were Latino. You name it, and I can show you a discriminatory ad for it. Now, just to clarify for any of the lawyers in the room, under the Federal Fair Housing Act, it's illegal to print or place or even speak a housing advertisement like this. And that law clearly applies to print advertisement. So the New York Times or any other newspaper would be clearly held accountable for this kind of advertising. But there's a law that conflicts with the Federal Fair Housing Act. It's called the Communications Decency Act. And it says that, that a publisher is not liable for the items that are placed on its website by a third party. And so when someone places an ad like this, for instance, on Craigslist, it suggests perhaps that Craigslist is not liable. And so even now, issues like this are being fought out, and so far courts have not been that favorable to the idea that publishers should be held responsible for these kinds of ads being posted. As a matter of fact, the National Fair Housing Alliance was able to find discriminatory ads, not this egregious, but certainly discriminatory after Hurricane Sandy. Now, I just want to pause for a second to note that one of the websites that I showed you guys was DHR Online, Disaster Housing Relief Online. That website was a FEMA-sponsored website. So if you applied for benefits through FEMA online, then as soon as you finished applying for your benefits, you were immediately forwarded to the DHR Online website to look for housing to rent. So imagine going through this disaster and applying for benefits and going through all the difficulties that happened when you dealt with FEMA at the time. And I know that folks even now are still having difficulty in navigating the FEMA process. And then you get there, and then an ad like this is what welcomes you and what greets you. We realized that we needed to test the water and to see just how bad and how significant these issues were in the city of New Orleans and in the state of Louisiana. We did what's called a rental audit, where we did mystery shopping, essentially. We'd send people to try to rent apartments and compare the results. And so the rental audit that we did was an audit to see if there was discrimination against African Americans renting in post-Katrina New Orleans. And after we compiled all the results, one of my staff members said, wow, I mean, this is almost like if the property is for rent unless you're black. And so that became the title. So what we found was that in 57% of the circumstances, our African American testers were discriminated against. They were denied housing almost exclusively because of their race. So it became really clear that we were going to have a very difficult time.